Hey everyone, it's Emily, and I'm going to do a series of videos on my channel where I describe the climate plans of some of the dominant Democratic candidates for the 2020 election. So the debate season has kind of kicked off, and recently this past week there were some debates among 20 of the Democratic candidates for presidency, or for the U.S. presidency in 2020. There are going to be another set of debates at the end of July, and candidates are starting to come out with more detailed plans on various topics, including climate change and environmental issues in general. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to describe some of the plans from some of the candidates to kind of see where some of them are at, what have they proposed so far, so that going into the July debates, hopefully we can all be a little bit more familiar with what they have unveiled so far for their environmental platform, and hopefully those will continue to evolve throughout the campaign season. I'm hoping that there will actually be a specific climate debate, although that hasn't actually been settled yet, and there hasn't been confirmation that that will actually happen. Of course, this is always subject to change. I'm filming this at the end of June, and so, from the time of filming this, at least from when I was researching for this video, things change very quickly. So I hope this is the most current information as of when this is actually posted, but we'll see. And I definitely plan on doing more detailed videos later. These are not designed to be fully comprehensive videos. I'm not going to go into deep analysis of whether or not these plans will work or how the numbers are going to work out on these plans. I just want to kind of give a broad overview of what has actually been proposed, and then hopefully later on in the campaign season, once the candidates have actually kind of narrowed a little bit, or the field has narrowed down a little bit, can do a deeper dive into looking at the numbers and whether or not these plans will actually accomplish what they want to, and kind of my overall thoughts on them. But I wanted to start with Elizabeth Warren for my first video, and then I'll do a series of a few more before the July debates. I won't be able to talk about all of the candidates certainly, but I wanted to start with Elizabeth Warren and kind of give an overview of kind of where she stands on climate issues, and then talk about the proposals that she's made so far. So she definitely accepts the overall scientific consensus that climate change is very much happening and very much a problem, and predominantly caused by human activities. And she ties this a lot to her other platforms. So one of the unique things about Elizabeth is that she ties this into her policies on economics and land use, and she's integrating it into other platforms and other policies rather than having one standalone thing that is her climate policy and her climate proposal. It's very much integrated into everything else that she's talking about, and she very much tends to view it as part of a larger discussion on economics, power, including money in politics and influence in politics, or how that influences policy and politics, insurance, social justice issues. It's very much tied into those other things for her as well. And she was one of the people who helped craft a piece of legislation, I believe it was a couple of years ago, that ultimately was designed to get companies to disclose risk from climate change on their financial assets, and publicly post information on their emissions and how climate change was basically affecting their operations. And she has also signed the No Fossil Fuel Pledge and has endorsed the Green New Deal. So she, along with many other candidates, kind of endorsed the Green New Deal in theory, and have kind of made more specific policy proposals to take the spirit of the New Deal and kind of get some meat and flesh behind it to make it a specific proposal. And so it's not necessarily a centerpiece of her campaign like it is for Jay Inslee, but it is very much, as I said, integrated into a lot of other things that she's talking about. So as far as her plan, she's come out with a few different plans that predominantly encompass her climate policy. So she has kind of divided it into public lands policy, an economic investment package, as well as a package on military and how the military uses energy and the emissions from military activities and what can be done to kind of curb those. So I'll talk about them a little bit in turn. So the first one is her proposal dealing with public lands. So one of the first things that she said is that she will immediately end new fossil fuel leases on federal lands. That's one of the things she would like to do immediately when she gets into the White House, or if she gets into the White House. And she also has tied this into policies, or added on a lot of policies and suggestions for how to reduce methane emissions from land use as part of a climate proposal. So another thing that she's talked about is an economic proposal. So she's invested a $2 trillion package that will span a 10-year period and kind of be invested in different research and manufacturing, as well as exports, and also be tied to foreign investment, not only in terms of getting foreign countries to invest in American technology and clean technology, but also help other countries adopt this technology, use it, and get it integrated. So a lot is actually tied into this $2 trillion policy. I'm not going to go too much into detail. I'll post a lot of information below. I wanted to kind of keep this a short video, but I'll post a lot of information below, and I'll also have a blog post where I'll go into more detail about this. But she's proposed essentially a large package of research and technology and manufacturing investment, and essentially kind of wants to make a National Institute for Clean Energy, I think is kind of how you can think about it. So like the National Institute for Health, but for investment in clean technology and getting that exported to other countries, as well as actually used domestically. So the final prong that she's unveiled so far deals with military. So the U.S. military is responsible for a lot of emissions around the world, but it's also going to be very impacted by climate change. There's been a lot of discussion about climate change as a national security issue in the United States and around the world. So not only is climate change expected to exacerbate different political tensions around the world, it's also very much affecting the actual facilities that the military uses, bases, etc. around the world. There are quite a few of those that are at risk because of climate change, and the military has long been one of the departments that has tried to be very vocal actually about climate change and needing to invest in sustainability and reducing emissions from military facilities and military activities, but also just making sure that facilities will be resilient to climate change. Elizabeth has a package that deals with energy and transportation, as well as the facilities the military uses, and making sure that those are resilient and as efficient as possible. So one of the neat things is kind of the international focus of her policies, and I guess, as I mentioned earlier, not only in terms of exporting clean technology to other countries, but also helping aid with migration. Climate change is expected to exacerbate migration and migratory tensions around the world, and so part of what her package specifically focuses on is helping in terms of foreign aid with migration as well. And so as far as how she plans to pay for that $2 trillion package and some of these other policies, includes a wealth and corporate tax and ending fossil fuel subsidies as well. So those are how she's proposed to help pay for some of these policies. So that's a very brief glimpse of what Elizabeth Warren has proposed so far. As I said, I hope that there are going to be further debates on climate change. Unfortunately, climate change was only 6 or 7 minutes of each of the nights with the first 2 nights of debates between the 20 candidates. It was 6 or 7 minutes each night, which is really unfortunate. Of course, there are a lot of things to talk about with presidential candidates, but I was hoping that climate change would be a little bit more predominant in those debates. I hope that it will be in the July debates, at the very least, if not a full debate exclusively about climate change. I hope that can happen throughout the debate season as candidates prepare for the primaries. I'll be back in future videos with some information on other candidates, and hopefully later on in the year we'll be back with more analysis on a select few candidates and a deeper dive into their climate change plans. So be sure to subscribe for more information on sustainability and climate change. I also talk a lot about books. I'll link my Instagram and Twitter below. That's where I like to hang out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.